Hello everyone, Brian Kibler here with another of my constructed video series for StarCityGames.com. And as you can see on your screen, I'm going to be playing with green-red aggro today. Many of you may have seen my recent Teamer mid-range video where I failed miserably and did not manage to win a single match. And one of the things that sort of I noted in a lot of those games was I had a lot of cards that, in that newer version of the deck that really didn't mesh well with the overall strategy of what the deck was sort of doing. It was being pulled in a bunch of different directions. I was trying to go like kind of control-ish, in some cases, and aggro-ish in others, and things just didn't gel well. It didn't have all that much synergy. And I was sort of thinking about the way that Standard plays out right now and what a lot of the decks are like, and basically came to the conclusion that a lot of the decks, like the whip decks, are very well positioned to win a long game against a deck that's trying to be sort of a mid-range deck, like a 4 or 5 casting cost creature ramp style deck with various utility cards. They like the cards like Stubborn Denial. It's like, if you have Stubborn Denial at the right time, it can be great to protect your creature from Murderous Cut or whatever. But if you draw a Stubborn Denial after your creature's already dead, it's just going to sit in your hand a lot of times, and your opponent is able to generate incremental advantages and ultimately kill you. So I wanted to sort of take a step back from what I was doing with Teamer and sort of look again at what the ultimate goal of the deck, at least originally, was, and that was to be a powerful aggressive deck. And I was wanting to try Elvish Mystic again, basically, because Elvish Mystic is a card that allows you to basically just play a turn ahead of your opponents. It's much more powerful than Sylvan Caryatid or Rattleclaw Mystic in a deck that can utilize it effectively. And utilizing it effectively basically means going away from Savage Knuckleblade. You can have builds that can play Mystic and Knuckleblade, but they take tons of damage from their own lands, are substantially less consistent than some of the other options. And I wanted to explore basically Elvish Mystic into Rabblemaster and the sort of powerful openings that are possible with that. And I came upon the deck that Logan Mize played in the Star City Games Players Championship, and it looked like just what I was looking for. So I decided to sort of take some stuff from his deck and try it out. And I made a few changes. I found it kind of funny where he was talking about how there were no three toughness creatures in Standard right now that see any play when Sidisi won the tournament that he is that he was coming from. So I have Lightning Strike and not Magma Jet in my deck. The other big differences here are that I have a couple of Rattleclaw Mystics. I think that the deck wants a little bit more to do in the early turns. Elvish Mystic and Heir of the Wilds isn't enough to have to play on your first and second turn if you're playing an aggressive deck. The deck really wants to be able to get started earlier than just turn 3, especially since many of the turn 3 creatures don't have an immediate impact necessarily. So I wanted to try a couple of Rattleclaw Mystics, not the full 4. I have 2 Mystics. Well, I have 6 Mystics, but 2 of them are Rattleclaws. And then ramping into the 3 casting cost creatures. I had removed Boonsater from the Teamer deck because it was going in a more mid-range direction. This deck is much more aggressive, and I can actually use Boonsater extremely well. This is a deck that puts a lot more pressure on your opponent because it gets in the ground faster. It's not revolving around a bunch of 4 casting cost creatures. There's the 3s, then the 4s, and the 5s. If you just look at the curve of this deck, you have the 11 things here at 2, along with Elvish Mystic, Heir of the Wilds, and Rattleclaw. You have a lot more ability to get in the board and pressure your opponent's life total. And that makes Boonsater a lot more attractive. I have a split between Ashcloud Phoenix and Polukranos at 4 mana. That's basically, A, I'm not sure which one I want, and B, I think it's possible that you want a mix of them, because Polukranos and Ashcloud Phoenix I think are good in different contexts, and I don't want to have all Ashcloud Phoenixes in a world where my opponents are very likely to have Doomwink Giants. I talked a little bit about how I had been a little less excited about Ashcloud Phoenix in Teamer before, because it is more vulnerable to a lot of the removal effects people are playing now. It also matches up very poorly, as I just mentioned, against Doomwink Giant. I do want substantial creatures at 4, and I think Polukranos is an excellent option there. But Phoenix is, evasion is very good, particularly with cards like Boonsater. And this is also a deck that can really use the damage if it goes face down and you trigger flip it face up. Because you're getting a lot of early damage with stuff like Heir of the Wilds, Rabblemaster, a lot of incremental damage there. The value of that trigger is higher because you're just much more likely to be putting your opponent under a lot of pressure. The other big change is I have a couple of copies of Sarkhan in my deck and only 3 Stormbreath Dragons, and that is largely in response to the popularity of Murderous Cut. Stormbreath Dragon was awesome for a while, I think, when decks were full of Obzan charms and didn't really have that many ways to effectively kill Stormbreath Dragon, but now Murderous Cut is just the most popular removal spell in many decks. And that means that Stormbreath Dragon is not that difficult to deal with, and as a 5 casting cost 4/4, it's not super exciting. Sarkhan is not only a very versatile card because it can be used as a removal effect, but also dodges Murderous Cut extremely well. If there's more Murderous Cuts out there than Hero's Downfalls, then Sarkhan is in a way better spot than Stormbreath Dragon is. Similar to Abzan Charm. Abzan Charm deals with Sarkhan, doesn't hit Stormbreath, so as the sort of removal spells that are popular in the format shift, the value of the two to each other also shifts. So, sideboard-wise, the card that I was most sort of excited about in the version that I saw Logan Mize playing was Fated Conflagration. For those who've been following my adventures with Temur, I've been struggling with decks that are putting me under pressure with Siege Rhinos, and this is a deck that can get on the ground faster than the opponent with the 2s and 3s. If they're playing, if they play like a Siege Rhino, unless they're on the play and play it on turn 3, you can often just have creatures in play and then use your Fated Conflagration to kill your opponent's Siege Rhino immediately and just keep attacking, and that's fantastic. You're trading 4 mana for 4 mana. And also, Fated Conflagration has the versatility that it can kill Planeswalkers, which is something that is very valuable against many of those same decks. Many decks with Siege Rhino also have cards like Elspeth, or perhaps Sorin is getting a little less popular, but Ajani as well. So having a powerful removal spell that also scries, that can deal with a card that is one of the more challenging cards for you to be able to actually deal with is really nice. A mix of Arc Lightning and Barrage of Boulders to give you removal, as well as just sort of the ability to attack through. I like Barrage of Boulders more in this deck than I did in Temur, because they're, again, you're getting on the ground faster, you're coming out and dealing more damage to your opponent more quickly, so the ability to just force your opponent to be unable to block is more likely to just kill them. So Barrage, I think, is stronger here. And then the mix here, Destructive Revelry, I think again is more powerful in this deck than it was in Temur because of the damage element of it, and I also like the Revelry because of the damage better than Back to Nature. You're not really looking to get value; you're looking to kill your opponent. And then Savage Punch and the Planeswalkers here. Savage Punch is against other green decks. It's a very strong card you can use with Fanatic of Xenagos, Boonsader, or whatever to fight their larger creatures. And then Chandra and Xenagos. Chandra is a card that I'm trying out in place of one of the Fated Conflagrations from Logan's deck, because I think that it is it's a proactive way that you can get by potentially Siege Rhino, as well as pick off tokens from Hornet Queen and such that also can give you value against other sort of control decks that where you want to have a way to switch out cards like Lightning Strike and Crater's Claws. So. Xenagos is more against the heavy control decks, less against the sort of more creature-based decks. Though with Xenagos next to Fated Conflagration, I actually think it might be worth bringing in Xenagoses against decks like Obzan, because you're able to deal with their rhinos and keep them under pressure and prevent their removal spells from getting value by using Xenagos. So anyway, that's where we are with this. This is the deck that I'm testing to play in the Grand Prix in Denver. It's actually where I'm leaning right now. I've been playing a little bit and had a good amount of success with it so far. Been overall just impressed with how smoothly it runs, and we're going to take it for a spin. So here we go.